Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role. The definitive product marketing course, Product Marketing Core, is the perfect platform for experienced product marketers to broaden their existing knowledge, as well as educate newcomers beginning with their product marketing journey. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world, and every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. The community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. With a PMA membership plan, everything a product marketeer could possibly need is all in there, all in one place. Whether you want to grab a template, learn about how to become more strategic from product marketeers who've mastered it, sit back and watch hundreds of hours of presentations from some of the world's most trusted brands, our packages have got it all and more. We really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop. How to approach positioning. Now, let's take a look at a better approach to positioning. Weak positioning is usually the result of hanging on to a default market position that is rooted in the history of the product idea. First things first, wipe the canvas clear. A pretty common pitfall lots of marketers and companies make is clinging on to the reason the product was created in the first place. And the reality is, the problem it was originally solving might not necessarily be the core problem it's solving now, or the reason people purchase. Your product has probably changed, and so have your customers. So if you glue yourself to this belief, you'll be derailing all your next steps and setting yourself up for a pretty defunct position. So that's step one, letting go of that historical baggage and putting the value you deliver today at the center of your positioning. The things that make you unique are the reason your offering deserves to exist in the first place. Step two is all about isolating what actually makes you unique, and that could be anything from a business model to a price point to a feature to a set of supply chain relationships to a proprietary process. Whatever that is for you, this is your time to capture it. So start by listing everything you have that makes your offering unique, and don't get too hung up on the value those features deliver. In this step, we just want to list things that you have that nobody else has, regardless of who cares about it. To get you out of the blocks, here are a few questions to ask yourself. What physical features does our product have that our competitors doesn't? Is our product easier to use? Is our product quicker to use? Is our product more customizable? Is our product more economically friendly? Is our product more luxurious? Do we have exclusive supply partners? Can our product integrate with more apps than our competitors? And so on. For this and the next stage, use a simple template like this one on screen to document your agreed upon findings. Customers don't care about your unique features, they care what those features can do for them. Your positioning needs to be centered on the value that you alone can deliver for customers. So, by now you should have a list of attributes, or at the very least one attribute that makes you unarguably unique. You then need to work your way through that list and pinpoint why your customers should even care about that attribute. So how does that attribute in turn benefit them? Because that's all they care about. For example, if you're a mobile phone manufacturer and your phone has a longer battery life than anyone else in the market, the value might be that your customers can go out and about all day, use their phone as normal, and not have to worry about it dying on them. Or if your product integrates with more apps than your competitors, it might be that your customers see everything from one dashboard without ever having to flick between tabs again. The possibilities are endless here, but the key is understanding where the value lies for your customers, not you, not your competitors, not anyone else, your customers. You'll probably notice we haven't mentioned anything about which customers this positioning is for, and that comes next. For this, the previous exercises, you need to think more broadly. Many kinds of prospects care about what you deliver, but only some of them really care. Understanding how to find those prospects is the key to maximizing revenue return on your marketing and sales efforts. Okay, so now's the time to think about which customers will actually really care about this unique value you provide, because there are some that won't, some that might care a bit, and some that will just be amazed by it. You want to pinpoint those people who are going to be wowed. This is a super important stage for any size business, but particularly for startups. It can be make or break. When you're starting out, you might not have deep pockets, and every marketing cent you spend has to be working for you. And these people are going to be much easier and quicker to convert. That's not to say you disregard the rest, of course, but you just start with that low-hanging fruit first. Don't make the mistake of going too broad on this step. For example, let's say your company sells a portable point-of-sale solution, and you in turn say your target market is any business who sees their customer face-to-face. You wouldn't necessarily be wrong, but not every single customer is going to care about your product equally, or even at all. When you really drill into it, it's businesses who, yes, see their customers face-to-face, but also have the need to take their payment solution away from their physical store. So businesses who travel, so your taxis, hairdressers, businesses who attend trade shows or festivals, restaurants who might take payments outside on a nice day, and so on. You go from positioning your product to all customer-facing companies to all customer-facing companies who need portable payment solutions. These are the people who really care about your solution and are significantly more likely to listen and act when they learn about the value your product brings to the table. When you're going through this exercise, ask yourself, if the future of your product depends on you selling as much as you could this month, are these the people I'd go to first? If the answer isn't yes, keep on drilling deeper. The fifth and final step is pinning down your frame of reference. Your frame of reference is how your product is perceived by your target market. For example, Coca-Cola's frame of reference would be soft drinks. Netflix would be online streaming. Airbnb would be accommodation, rentals, and so on. Getting the right balance with your frame of reference is key. If you go too broad, you won't resonate with your customer market. Too narrow, and you could miss on opportunities. If you work at a fairly established company, this frame of reference could well be different to what it was when it first started, and that in itself can be a challenge. Getting A, people internally to accept the shift, and B, translating that shift externally. It has to be done though. If you work in new or breakthrough emerging tech, the frame of reference might not even exist yet. And in this case, it would need to be likened to some sort of adjacent tech they are familiar with, like augmented reality and virtual reality, for example. Markets are consistently evolving, and if your frame of reference doesn't reflect those changes, your product will get left behind. Let's refer back to that template again, because by now this should all be filled in, and once it is, take a step back and ask yourself, does it effectively differentiate your product? Is it believable, unique, and memorable? Does it speak directly to your customers? Is it easy to understand? Will it stand up against your competitors? Can you honestly own it? The answers to all these questions need to be yes. And of course, the road doesn't just end there. For positioning to be effective, it has to be used. And to be used, it needs to be communicated. So you need to communicate your work with the entire business, particularly your product, engineering, sales, and customer success teams, and share how either your positioning or market or frame of reference shift impacts things moving forward. What do your new target customers look like? Which new competitors are you now up against? What skills and knowledge do your sales teams now need to better sell? Do our existing partnerships still make sense? Is the current roadmap still relevant? There are so many things to consider. And to make sure nothing gets missed, it's a good idea to bring key stakeholders from various departments together so you can hash everything out together. Last but not least, you need to make sure your positioning actually works, and that means putting your assumptions live and seeing what the results are. A pretty easy to see sign you've nailed your positioning is if the sales start rolling in, and this can be picked up in the numbers and by speaking to your sales guys. Here are some telltale signs your positioning isn't working though. The first is if your prospects aren't really understanding what it is you do, and this is usually because your market category isn't well known, your value is weak, or your unique differentiators just aren't all that unique. The second is if your prospects are walking away thinking you're not for them, and this one's a result of going too broad with your target segment. To overcome this one, go back to the drawing board, be more specific, and clearly signal who you're targeting. The third sign is prospects not understanding your value, and this could be a combination of the value you identified being weak or your prospects not finding your value as valuable as you hoped. The penultimate symptom of weak positioning is if your prospects don't believe you can deliver on the value you've promised, and this one comes down to lack of proof. People just don't believe what you tell them. You have to show them with things like case studies that your word is good. And finally, the last sign is if your prospects think you're similar to other solutions out there, and this will be because your unique value isn't unique at all. Okay, so one final tip before we finish up with positioning. When you're filling in your positioning template, whatever that might look like, we'd recommend adding a date to it. That way, you know exactly when it was last done and don't fall foul of not revisiting it for years because no one can remember when it was last looked at. And remember, we touched on it right at the start of this course, but to reiterate, your positioning work isn't for external use, and those key attributes and value areas aren't public-facing lines to put on your website or marketing collateral. They lay at the foundation for your messaging work, and the words used in your messaging documents are ones that you might be directly used in marketing and sales materials. We've mentioned the difference between positioning in startups and established companies a couple of times in this course. So for those of you who want to explore that in a bit more detail, here's a short video with April Dunford on how positioning process differs for startups versus established businesses. How does the positioning process work for startups versus large organizations?
Yeah, the positioning, the fundamentals of positioning aren't different between a startup and a large established company, but what you can get away with is different in terms of how you execute on a position. So, for example, there are different styles of positioning. You can either go into an established market or you can attempt to create your own market and then position your product within the market that you create. Creating a market or creating a market category and then positioning yourself in there is much more easy to do if you have the resources and the credibility in the market that a big company would already have. Whereas for a brand new startup, it isn't that you can't do it, you can. And there are some examples of startups coming out of the gate, crafting a new market and then positioning in it. It's just that the act of creating a market takes some time. And during the period while you're creating the market, you don't make a lot of money because it's hard to sell things when they're not well positioned yet. So until the market's created, you're not making a lot of money. So you either need committed, patient investors, or you're making money doing something else because you're a big company and you can afford to play this longer game of creating a market and then positioning in it. What's more common in a startup is to position in an existing market that's well understood, so you don't have to sell people on why email needs to exist or why CRM needs to exist, but and then you're positioning your offering as something that meets the needs of a particular subsegment of that market that isn't well served by the current market leader. That's much more common in startups. But the process and the methodology and how we break positioning into parts and put it back together is actually the same, whether you're talking about established company, brand new startup, it's the same.